Hello everyone, welcome in. It's going to be a bit of a long one, so I'll jump right into it. We'll begin here with the response to the response about contact with Devin. The main issue here for me was point number 3, where it says Ms. Trevizo, not wanting to be in violation of the court order in any way, was merely trying to alert the court to the fact that both were going to college at the same university and both would be living on campus and may be in the same classes and certainly on the same campus. That's very disingenuous because no, you weren't. You were definitely asking, like you do in point 7 here, for them to allow modifications. You weren't simply saying, like I said that you should have in my video about the state's response, to just inform them they'd be around and let them know that Alexee respects the conditions of her release and will not contact Devin. But alas, you guys think you're above the law, in my opinion. As shocking as this may be, I don't actually care if they see each other or not at this point. We have bigger fish to fry, and I'm almost inclined to let her keep having a bunch of little wins before what I think will be her huge loss in a guilty verdict, but maybe that's just me. Now we move on to the longer document, the more substantial and more important document, the response to the response about the motion to suppress and the privilege and all of that. So, I'll begin by saying this document does one thing very well, and that it is literally does not even begin to touch the idea that Alexee is charged with murder. If you didn't know what she was charged with, you'd have no clue. You'd almost think this is like a motion in her civil case with how they present the information and facts. They quote quite a few different court cases in this. One is Pena versus Espinoza. I think that's like the most important one that they are quoting. That case essentially boils down to a car accident where a car was hit from behind. The person who got hit brought a civil suit for their injuries. The defendant in the case requested 5 years worth of medical records from the plaintiff, including irrelevant records way beyond the scope of the claims in the case, like gynecological records and stuff. Well, the court erred in their decision to allow all of that medical information into the case, and the Supreme Court reversed that decision. Though that case and this case have to do with privileged information and everything, I find them different in that the Pena case, opposition clearly overreached with trying to introduce all this evidence, and of course the court erred in letting it in. But in this case, all of the information is very relevant to the fact, so we will see how the judge has to rule on that. Okay, for starters, I love how paragraph number 1 and number 3 just contradict themselves. They say that the hospital's hiding things and blaming Alexee, but then in number 3, they also say that the hospital released her medical records to the public. So which one is it? Specifically, when it comes to paragraph number 3, I take issue here because it says that the hospital staff released the medical records. They specifically say the medical records, which a TikToker is who released those medical records. Unless anyone else has any other proof or has seen these medical records anywhere else, let me know. But as far as I can see, the only one who released these medical records to the public is a TikToker. Paragraph 5 has some very, very disingenuous language, as they are still insinuating that the doctor intended to question Alexee in cooperation with the police while Alexee was in some drug-induced state. Even though Alexee was able to offer explanations for her actions in the moment, without a question being presented. At the mere mention of a dead baby being in the bathroom, she volunteers a confession, right? So when the doctor said we found a dead baby in the bathroom, she doesn't go, oh, that's nuts, crazy, wow, wild. She made an admission without a question even being posed. So no one interrogated her. Secondly, the doctor focused on the medical needs of Alexee as much as possible while trying to explain the situation. The police stopped Rosa from conducting a literal FBI-level interrogation of Alexee at one point. So no one was coercing Alexee to make statements except her own mother. Moving on here, paragraph 6, it leaves out a key word from the law, which is suspected. Okay, here it says, the state submits HIPAA does not preclude medical providers from disclosing information to police for a crime committed on the premises. That is not the language from the law. I know that because I have been reading the crap out of this law. I know for a fact that the law says that if a suspected crime, they are allowed to turn information over to police if they believe a suspected crime has taken place. They don't have to know that a crime has taken place, as they're trying to infer in paragraph number 6. You don't get to say no crime has taken place. We're still investigating the crime. We're going to trial over the crime, buddy. I don't know. This point makes no sense to me, and maybe I'm missing something, but it's possibly one of their weakest points, and one that might actually upset the judge. Judges do not like when you misrepresent the law. They understand that you're going to be dramatic and misrepresent facts so that they favor your side. What they do not like is leaving words out or misrepresenting the law that the judge is deciding on. That they do not like that. That makes them very mad. How they word this is trying to say that the hospital would have to investigate everything before getting the police involved when they suspect a crime happened. So you want what? Do the police or do the doctors need to have a law degree? Do they need to be sworn in officers of the court to practice medicine so that they can decide crimes? It does not make sense, and that's why this is a really bad point. Unless I'm completely missing the point, paragraph 6 is really quite infuriating. Paragraph 7 doesn't really matter. Paragraph 8, it has a good question. Did Alexee know her rights? And that's a fundamental question that I think should be asked of every person who turns 18 by people who love them, right? In the United States, when you turn 18, everyone should try to make sure that you know your rights. That being said, it was her responsibility to know her rights in this moment, and Miranda doesn't matter. I've been beating this point into the ground because, again, like I've said, TV, movies, they kind of make you think Miranda happens sooner than it needs to sometimes. You can be detained without Miranda. Once you are arrested, they will Mirandize you. And the best example for how police officers can conduct investigations without Mirandizing a suspect is DWIs. If you've never seen a DWI stop, go look one up on YouTube and you will see that before anyone is Mirandized, before a suspect in a DWI stop is Mirandized, the cop can gather a lot of probable cause information. They don't just say, you're clearly drunk, I'm taking you to jail, Mirandized. They are able to administer breathalyzers, tests on the side of the road to test your sobriety, asking you questions, all before Mirandizing you. Once you're placed under arrest, they will Mirandize you. But that is the best way to explain how cops are able to gather probable cause before Mirandizing you. It holds up in court. That is the principle of Miranda. Cops are able to gather information. As long as they do not directly interrogate you, you do not need to be Mirandized. I think they're hoping that the judge is going to feel bad for Alexee by using this point and saying that she's still in high school, even though she's not a minor. How is she supposed to know her rights? And unfortunately, ignorance of the law is not an excuse in any form. So ignorance of your rights should not be an excuse when your rights were not needed to be disclosed to you. Also, Alexee was able to assert her rights multiple times, once when the police attempt to question her outside of school, once when they call and she says she won't talk with a lawyer, again when the detective verifies that outside of her house when he has to see her say that she will not speak without a lawyer present, and then again when she is officially arrested. So she had 4 times to assert her right to silence. So I do not find this to be a strong point whatsoever. Paragraph 9 is relevant as it's talking about a police officer who repeatedly questioned someone who had asked them to stop, which, like I said, not relevant in this case. Paragraph 10, also irrelevant, in my opinion, because it cites a case where a doctor and police, I guess, clearly worked together to get information from a patient, which again did not happen here. Same with paragraph 11, as it's citing a case in which the court used a court-ordered psychological assessment for competency at the penalty phase of the trial, which was ruled in violation of the defendant's Fifth Amendment rights. Again, not what's happening here. It ends paragraph 11 with saying that the doctor interrogated Alexee, which again is not true. The doctor never asked Alexee any questions other than ones of medical nature, meaning if she could be transferred. Paragraph 12, this is where you wrap everything up and you essentially drive home your points and ask for what you want. It mentions the medical records again, which irks me because the chain of custody on those documents is looking a little funky to me. That's all I'll say right now. They wrap it up with their implications that the doctor worked with the cops to coerce these statements, in my opinion, false. They ask the judge to decide what medical records, if any, should be disclosed. Obviously, they ask for the suppression of Alexee's statements, obviously, because they know that is what is going to fry their egg. I have sprinkled my opinions all throughout this, but I'll just do a quick little rundown here. First and foremost, we all understand that the defense needs to defend. I get that. That's what they need to do. And after reading the Supreme Court's findings in the Pena case, I am even more convinced that the judge will do a personal review, the in-camera review, as they call it, of this evidence. And I think that the attorneys will get to make their arguments. For the record, the judge will retire to chambers and go through all of this. I know I'm just a lowly paralegal here. I'm not a judge, but I do think that the judge will want to decide what information is relevant and not, piece by piece, just in case, just to have a fair trial. The judge is unbiased, right? The judge is supposed to be unbiased and won't look at this evidence as whether it's good or bad for either side, but rather what's its place according to the law, right? The judge could surprise us and say that because it's not a lengthy medical history like the case they cited, and because the medical information is specific to the incident in question, that they are relevant and they don't include extremely personal details, rather the course of action that took place before and after a crime. Right? So no coerced statements from her, yada, yada, yada. Maybe the judge finds it all relevant and unprivileged. Now, it's more likely the judge might have to go and comb through and piecemeal and pull little bits and pieces out so that it's not just a blanket yes or a blanket no. I will say that Gary does a great job distancing themselves from reality in their motions, but he does a bad job at providing solid arguments for what he's trying to say. Their other flaw is that the evidence that the judge will see, in my opinion, is misrepresented in the defense's motions, which is never great. Essentially, Gary Mitchel is saying all of this and then going to have to give the judge the same evidence we've all seen thus far and possibly even more. And then the judge is going to be able to see what's happening. And when you've completely misrepresented the facts, again, judges, they understand being dramatic, but they do not like extreme exaggerations of the truth, and that's just my opinion. That being said, with or without all this evidence, we now know how much of a clown, in my opinion, the expert for the defense is. So they basically they have no legit expert, they have a confession from the police, their choice of expert leads us to believe the forensics are going to hold up. If the witness statements are made by the hospital staff are allowed in, that is the final pieces to the guilty verdict. That's why Gary is so hell-bent on getting them suppressed. But from the case law I have read, it's definitely up in the air, and the judge could possibly even be more inclined to allowing this stuff in than not, because it's all very relevant and it's not probative into her history or beyond the scope at all. All the statements made to hospital staff, they show her intent to deceive and conceal, right? So that's why they're really going to cook her goose. Gary still will not mention the bag. I'm waiting to hear how Gary explains the baby being in the bag. At this rate, he's going to say the baby crawled into there itself, and his expert is going to testify to that. Like, that's how low I see their arguments right now. But hopefully New Mexico's chairs are more stable than the people who are going to be sitting in them soon, and that's just my opinion. A quick shout out to the 100+ subscribers. I truly appreciate all the support. It means the world to me. I am not a content creator by any means, but I do love the law and I dislike when I see BS going on, and I'm really hopeful for justice in this case, as I'm sure you are too. So thank you for being here. I hope we have a smooth ride to victory. We ride it on. Everyone, thank you so much for making it this far. If you're interested in following this case to trial, please subscribe, as I will be covering it all along the way with the legal bent. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them down below. It's your girl Friday. See you in the next video. Okay, bye. It's your